he had him take a look at some of this stuff. All right, we're on Facebook and YouTube now, so we'll get started. You got to stay on even though I left, eh?
What's that?
You got to stay on even though I left, right? On the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, I'm gonna admit the viewers. All right. Admit everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you all. Glad to have you here. Let me go ahead and keep letting people in. Get a good size audience today. And should be a fun exploration of the bass string topic. Looking forward to that. We have had some rousing conversations with our good friend here, Douglas Craig, and having him back for some more. And yep, maybe he'll stir up some more controversy.
I'm good at that.
Good, great. So it keeps things entertaining. Okay, so I think we got a lot of people, and let me see if there's anybody else waiting. We got one person in the waiting room. Hello out there on Facebook and YouTube as well. And we'll get started with the intro to this session, let you know what we're doing here, and then we'll roll into things. So as I always say, I'll say welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. And this includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Master Classes, bringing you cutting-edge instruction online from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. Let's give an intro to our guest today. It's Douglas Craig. He's a retired veterinary pathologist and electron microscopist from Plum Island Animal Disease Center, where he worked in exotic viral diseases for 28 years. On the sideline, Douglas had been working on pipe organs and pianos and has been restoring his mother's collected antiques for over 30 years. He got his initial piano training from one of Steinway's top technicians, where he also represented Steinway on the East End of Long Island for warranty work and tunes for Steinway artists. His current business, which has about 1,500 clientele on Long Island, is a solo piano business where he moves, tunes, repairs, and rebuilds pianos. And today he's gonna give us his wisdom on what to do with bass strings and how to optimize their longevity and so on and so forth. So I'll kick it over to you, Doug. I know we got a presentation will pop up at some point, but go ahead and pop in with your opening remarks and we'll say hi.
Well, happy to be here. And the subject of bass strings is very dear to my heart because, in my opinion, bass strings are the heart of a good piano. And most of the old pianos have dull bass strings, and it's been quite a frustration since I rebuilt a lot of pianos and restore some lower end pianos that for students, and I really want to make those sound as good as they can, but it's often hard with a poor set of bass strings, and they often don't warrant $400 or $500 investment for another set of bass strings. If I have a high-end piano, for sure I put them in, and I prefer Arledge strings, which are wound tighter than the ones you get from the piano supply places. So, somebody there? So
Yes,
anyway,
muted. Someone was unmuted on accident. I got rid of that. You keep going.
I took an interest in how to make bass strings better. And some things I found by serendipity, and I'll show you why that happened, how that happened. But it was very, very fortuitous. When I first started trying to deal with some old bass strings, I did the usual thing and took a wire brush and a drill and polished them up, and they sounded a little bit better. Gave them a twist. Sometimes they sounded better sometimes, but not consistently. And I had a piano, not the one that's right behind me, but a Waters piano that used to sit here that my daughter had, and had a old set of bass strings in it, probably original. And I cleaned them, I twisted them. They sounded a little better, but one of them, well, I'm getting a little ahead of the story, but one of them was particularly bad, and I'll explain. It had a bad buzz, and that's how I got into a new discovery. But the bottom line is, the strings, I think strings are basically inert objects, and they shouldn't. Why do they go dull? So sometimes they get corroded, and that certainly happens where I live, near the salt water, and those may not be recoverable. But most of them just get dirty, and even worse than dirty, they get coated with tar and nicotine. And I know this because I'll explain later, but I heat the strings as part of the process of cleaning them, and it smells like an ashtray when you're burning off that residue. So tar and nicotine is the worst possible thing. And to verify that, actually, I take care of a 110-year-old piano in a historical society in Riverhead, Long Island. And the history is that piano's never left this farmhouse. And the lady of the house never allowed smoking in the house. And it's interesting because those 110-year-old strings are as good as new. So I'm pretty sure most old pianos suffered from accumulations of tar and nicotine. So, did you get the PowerPoint going?
Yeah, it's ready when you are. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's do it. One sec. All right, you can see it, right?
Yeah, I can see it. Go to the next one. Yeah, so I was just talking about why should bass strings die? Why should they get dull? And obviously corrosion, dust and dirt, tar and nicotine, and sometimes just loss of tension in the windings, because the way the strings are made, the core wire is flattened, and then the copper wire is wound on a lathe around the string, and then it's terminated in that flattened area under tension. So a really good string, like I get the string from Arledge, when I pick it up and hold it up, it doesn't hang like a piece of spaghetti. It hangs in a helix. So it's got a lot of internal tension, and it's because it's wound tightly on a lathe, and then it's swedged onto that flattened or squared part of the string down at the other end. So when it gets loose there, sometimes you can tighten it with a pair of pliers, vice grips, and then put some tension on it by twisting them. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Next, next slide. So my feeling is, these are just made of copper and steel. They shouldn't really die. They shouldn't degrade unless they're corroded or physically damaged. So, so how do you go about rejuvenating them? So I've done a number of experiments on this because it was kind of a fascinating story. Since it's just metal, I tried a variety of cleaning methods. Go to the next one. The way I got into this, I had this water piano that was behind me before, and it had this buzzing bass string. And I tried squeezing the ends of the windings. I tried twisting them, cleaning the string. Nothing really worked. It still buzzed. And I figured, well, I'm going to have to replace the string, but it's an opportunity to experiment a little. So I thought, well, maybe if the tip of the winding is not holding on the swedge part of the string, I'll put a drop of CA glue on the end and maybe that'll tighten it up. So I put a drop of CA glue on it, soaked in about a half an inch down the string, absolutely killed the string. It was dead. And then, oh boy, I'll probably have to replace this, but let's see if I can get the CA glue out of it and see what happens. I tried acetone and lacquer thinner, nothing really touched that dried CA glue. I thought about it for a while and I thought, how do you get dried CA glue out? And I thought, well, it's acrylic, cyanoacrylic. It's really plastic. So I'll try heating it. Maybe it'll melt or burn off. And sure enough, when I put a torch to the CA glue that was on the string lit up like a candle, and it burned away, and the buzz disappeared. That's interesting. And I heated several inches of the string, and that string sounded better. So I heated a little more of the string, and then a little more. I heated the whole string, and it sounded almost like a new string. So, but that I tried heating all of the strings with a torch, and they came out sounding almost like new strings. And I did smell the tar and nicotine coming off of those strings. So that's how I discovered this technique of torching strings. And so here's what I've worked out finally as a method. I first start by cleaning the strings with the softest wire wheel brush, cup style brush in a drill. And in an upright, you have to take the action out. In a grand, you don't have to. So I polish all the strings with the spine steel wire wheel. Be careful, especially on a grand around the ribs. Put some tape on the ribs so you don't run into the gold paint and wear it off, which I've done. So I've had to retouch that. But so I put tape along the ribs so I don't hit that again. And then block up the dampers so you can get in pretty close to the dampers. And I usually will put a twist in the whole set of strings and then clean them again clean the other side of the string, which usually isn't that dirty. It's usually the top side that's the dirtiest. And then I take a propane torch with a fairly small diameter head and run the torch up and down 2 strings at a time. And I'll show you a picture of that, how I do it. And You have to do this pretty carefully, quickly, moving along the string. And there's a delayed reaction in the heating process, but it turns from bright copper to an old gold color, ideally. If you overdo it, it starts to turn reddish and ultimately turn bluish, and that'll kill the string. So don't ask me how I know. Next slide will show you the process. In the upper left, I use a drill with the cup brush in it with a fine wire wheel in it. Oh, and do wear a respirator when you're doing this, because the copper and dust and dirt that comes off the strings is pretty irritating. So the atomized copper dust can get in your lungs. It's not good. So in the on the right side, you can see the cup brush polishing the strings. And then the next step, well, after turning them over and polishing the other side, next step is I take a propane torch, shield the soundboard with a piece of aluminum flashing, and pass that torch along a pair of strings, kind of in the valley in between two strings, moving it medium rate, about a couple inches per second along the length of the string, until I start to see an old gold color showing up in the strings, and then stop. And you end up with a picture on the right, a string that looks pretty much like an old gold string. So that's been heated to about 400 degrees and then let cool. On the next slide, show you what happens if you overdo it.
Can you just clarify for us?
Yeah.
Which one of these has been torched?
All four of these strings have been torched.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Go to the next one, and you see some strings that have been torched too much.
Okay. Just a sec here. Let's get back to normal size. And hit the next one. Okay.
Okay, you see the reddish color, and the worst is the iridescent blue color, and that's overdone. And those strings have not been able to recover once I've damaged them like that. So, but if you're careful in passing the torch up and down the string at a fairly good rate of speed, you'll see the color starting to change. And as soon as you start seeing it change, you don't want to continue to heat that string, because it's a slightly delayed reaction. It'll get a little darker as the heat conducts down through the copper. Anyway,
we have a question here from Kenneth Zeringer. You do this with strings under tension?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do this without taking the tension off the string. Obviously, when you heat them, it's going to go out of tune. As they cool, they'll come back somewhat to tune, but you're going to have to tune it anyway. But yeah, it is under tension.
And how does it affect the sound if you quote unquote overdo it? You know, you said it looks funny here.
It becomes dull, really dull. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not too hard to control if you know that's the caveat, not to overheat it. So on the next picture, there's a completed set. And this is on the Grand, and it sounded pretty good. The advantages of this on the next slide, The big problem with replacing bass strings, it takes a couple of weeks. You gotta take the strings out and send them off, or measure the strings and send off a rubbing and a measurements, and takes a week for them to be made, and there's a week of shipping back and forth. You know, it's a real pain. So this is a process that you can do in the piano, and it can be done in a day, and save the cost of a new set of strings. So it's certainly worth a try on an older piano, especially these less expensive pianos, but that sound okay with a good set of bass strings. But this will get you most of the way there. It's not quite like a new set, but it's much better. If you want to go next step, we'll go to the second method, which is one I've also developed. And that requires removing the strings from the piano, undoing the coil. Usually you break off the becket, and then wind them up like a set of strings that you would get from a supplier in a coil that'll fit into a bucket. I use either stainless steel or an enamel bucket, and put the wound set of strings into the bucket, fill the bucket with, in this case, I'll show you how I arrived at this, but 5 parts of vinegar, 1 part Lime-A-Way, and some Cascade dishwashing detergent. And then I'll put that usually outside. I'll do this outside with electric fry pan or my gas grill, and heat that bucket with the strings in it to near boiling, and then let it cool. And then I'll save that acid solution. I'll pour it off when it cools, and then rinse the strings about 10 times, and you'll be surprised how much dirt comes out of them as you rinse them. It takes about 10 rinses till the water runs clean. And now you have clean strings, shiny strings in water. And I don't have it on this list, but I do. I have a mixture of ballastol and water in distilled water, and I dip the whole, or pour that solution over the strings for a minute or two, then pour that back into a jug and save it. And that's a little like what's done with surgical instruments with what's called instrument milk, which is a